And the funny thing is, again, people start to notice you, and you start to get attention. You start to, like, don't worry about those parts. That's what I'm trying to say. If you're worried about money, you will always be worried about money. So that worry not gonna go away. If you are worried about that you are not good enough, you're not a good artist, that will stay with you, even if you become the greatest artist on earth. So it's up to you how you deal with all these uncertainties, fears, and all these mental. And we do have, as an artist, we do have negative thoughts like crazy, right? So
why is art so powerful? Is it even that important? Why do we even make art? These are the topics and more we cover in this episode of the Learn Squared podcast, as we welcome the absolutely brilliant Amin Farah. Amin shares his vast experience and intriguing philosophies on art, and to talk about his new Learn Squared course, Creative Illustration, which is available now. So buckle up and let's go. Hey everybody, welcome to the Learn Squared podcast. I'm excited to have today's guest on, Amin Farah. Hey Amin.
Hi man, how are you doing?
Very well. I'm excited to have you on for many reasons. One of the reasons is you're a great artist, and it's great to talk about art. And obviously beforehand, we've had a few discussions, mainly because from this thing you're doing with Learn Squared with us, which is a new course that's coming out, or at least at the time we're recording this episode, Creative Illustration. And also some of the things we've discussed since obviously we've started connecting with each other to promote the course is just your experiences and some of your, like, I guess, journey so far that I've had a little snippet of. Is very intriguing, very interesting to see. But first and foremost, welcome. And
Thank you.
Rather than me kind of like, give like a very half-baked introduction to yourself, for anyone new to obviously your work, maybe to the podcast in general, maybe even to art overall, I'd be grateful if you could give everybody a pure introduction to yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, my name is Amin. I've been in the industry for more than 17, 18 years now. I'm getting old. So I worked on different projects. I started with animation, and then I did commercial stuff. I worked all the way from like big clients to small clients to everything in between, mainly game and animation. And also I did some work for advertising. Right now I'm doing more freelance stuff and also focusing on my own project.
Awesome. So you've definitely clearly a lot of experience, not just in terms of like, I guess, length of time in mileage, but in terms of like experiencing many aspects of the industry. And I'm sure you got tales to tell for each single one, which I don't think we're able to cover in this podcast so far.
Sure.
So which definitely sets up future sequels. But like, what made you begin this journey? Like, why? Like 17 years ago, I'm sure it was way before that as well. What was that like? I ask this to everybody, but I'm super intrigued by this. But was there a particular thing that kind of like sparked your creative journey to life, or was it kind of like always there directing you towards this path?
Mainly the art school that I took when I was young. That was, I think, it had a main impact, and I really loved the whole atmosphere of being around with different artists. To this date, I'm a very social person, so I would love to collaborate with people, talk to people, especially, and having these never-ending discussions about art. So that was the main thing. But if I have to mention one artist that actually really kind of got my attention and I really loved his work was Carter Goodrich. There was this big book, like a black illustration book that we had in the school. I cannot remember whether I bought it or someone else brought it. I don't know. That was a great book, and I could see his work. And I think he had some illustrations for Scrooge, the character, and it was amazing, mind blowing. So I think that was for me. Was a major kind of turning point. I was like, I have to do this. This is amazing.
Oh, wow. I guess that's there you go. That is the trigger thing where it's kind of like it goes beyond thinking, hey, that's nice. Like, I have to do this. So when you saw that, when you like, did I have to do this? What were the next steps after that? Like, what did you start doing to kind of make sure that this is going to happen? Was it in terms of like the visual style, or was it just in terms of like I just want to work in the same kind of projects or the same spaces as Kai?
Yeah, the funny thing is that's a good question because I didn't have a clear kind of mind or idea of where I'm going like in general. But one thing that I knew is like I'm super hyped about this whole art and drawings and illustration, all that. And the funny thing is, it took me years. Like now, I don't know. I mentioned like a couple of decades now, right? Like that I've been doing this, and then eventually, slowly, I'm basically going back to that root. So I love illustration a lot. So. But I did all these different things to get to the point that I am now. So I could have done better in terms of choosing the right path to go.
Right.
But you kind of go forward, you
Yeah.
experience different things. But also, maybe all the experiences that I had from all the way from the industry and or personal experiences and all that kind of came to help me to build what I have today. So maybe it's a good thing. I don't know.
I mean, it's like a very interesting and a few things I'd love to unpack there. From a similar experience, it's not so much early on, but kind of like halfway through my education journey. I was at university thinking like, hey, what do I want to do? I took transport design. So it was a case of everyone was giving up to get jobs within the industrial design industry.
Right.
I always wanted to work or do work like in films or video games. And then it was a case of like, how do I use this platform that was clearly built to get you into a different industry that I wanted to get into? And then for me, it was a book also, Daniel Simon, his Cosmic Motors book.
Yeah,
and it was the exact same emotion where like, I have to do this. And it was a case of, I can relate because it's a case of like, okay, so it's like visual style do a kind of, well, even to this day, I'm trying to still emulate and it's nowhere near, but it's a case of like trying to get to that level. Then also, the unpacking and how to get kind of that kind of space as well. So
he had that Drive book, right? There was a book called it's stunning.
He did like I forgot the book. My mind goes blank sometimes, but his like working and stuff on his films with Tron and all that kind of stuff is a case of like the book alone was enough for me to kind of like, this is what I want to do. And then seeing his career further is a case of like, if there's ever a blueprint I want to check out, this is what it is. But then obviously the journey does take its toll, definitely has, fast forward till today, at least for myself. I'm not as experienced or decorated as yourself, for example, but I can definitely relate to the ups and downs of a journey. And I'm sure that it's been the same case for you as well. It's a case of like, it's been moving forward, because obviously where you got to today, but I'm sure there've been highs and lows. So like, I guess let's start with the good news. What was the biggest high that you had since you had that epiphany of like, this is what I want to do? What was your first big high after that?
I think it was the first job that I got. So I was like one of those homeless artists, who has his stuff in his bag and goes everywhere and tries to get in. So I was that basically. So I put my stuff together and I wasn't shy, so I was going everywhere, like showing my stuff to all the different companies and all the people that I could kind of get to talk to. Then all of a sudden, it landed me a job in an animation company, which wasn't really great, but it wasn't bad either. So I learned so much there, and I can't remember. I think, I started as an assistant for like layout stuff. The 2D animation. I learned a lot of good like basics there. Like from composition to different ways of showing a shot, camera angles and great stuff. So that was my like high point back then.
Nice. And like, imagine then, like, looking back now, obviously hindsight's always an amazing thing. And you mentioned that obviously you learned a lot of things that I guess like if you didn't have that job, how long would it have taken you to learn those specific things? Or was it almost like the only way you could learn them was on the job?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would say basically make your life harder by by taking things that you cannot do. That's my emo. And I always do that. So I think that's the best way to actually learn and grow, because there is no way that you go through certain concepts without having a purpose, right? Because if you have to earn money, or if you have to show yourself at work and all that, you must learn things. It's just that you don't have any other options. So that's a good thing sometimes. That's a good framework to work within. and I had that on so many levels. And then I kind of realized that the more I do this, the better. So I almost never said no to good opportunities until lately. But yeah, but things kind of came together. Yeah, I mean, I like
Nice.
take an assignment that you have problem with, or I mean, not something too big that kind of breaks your back or something, but something that you can handle, but at the same time you don't know how to do it exactly. So stuff like that are the best way to grow.
And is that like something that you've done continuously through your career, or has that always been early on, or even till today you kind of still
I'm still
felt
doing this. I'm
nice?
still going to places that I don't know, and I mess up, and like then get dirty and all that. But I think there's no other way around it, because I mean, if you there are great schools out there, right? They will cost you like crazy, and of course they have great teachers. They have all those good stuff. But honestly, even if you look at those schools, like from all the students that they go there, you don't see that many of amazing, like extraordinary artists. The reason why is like there are few people that are actually super hungry and they want to go there. They want to learn stuff, they want to grow, and that kind of motivation is super necessary if you want to grow and grow and grow and learn and learn and learn. And like human beings, we have some bad habits, right? Like we have lust, we have greed, all that. Why not to direct it towards good stuff, right?
For sure.
Education.
Yeah. I guess if you look at like, if it's like, say, I don't know, I'm not a scientist or a mechanic, but let's pretend I am. Like it's all energy, right? You direct it. If you can direct it, reroute the power into something that's kind of like where it needs to be. Why not? That clearly makes sense in that sense. But I guess it is better said than done. But like something I want to touch upon there, what you just mentioned as well, is a case of, do you think that it is that like more of the mental side, or more of like the drive, I guess the stuff that's not like a hard skill, in terms of like, how to do line work or render or, form and everything. Do you think it is that what separates those 2 or 3 students, or the 2 or 3, I guess, out of a bunch that really take it to another level? Obviously you mentioned like the drive and really want to take it to the next step. Do you think that's purely a mental thing, or am I missing something? There's maybe still the skill involved? Because I guess the easiest thing that people see, or what they first encounter, is the finished product, which is I guess you could say that the evidence of skill. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's a combination. I mean, mental stuff are super important, but also usually things like that come from like dark backgrounds, as I said. And this might not be necessarily a good thing, but it's up to you how you turn things around. So, for instance, money. If you are a poor person, if you never had money, it's just a natural thing for you that you just go for it, and you kill yourself to get to that point that you have enough money to not worry about it. Which is not going to happen, by the way, until you fix that first issue that you have. Anyways, so same thing applies for art. So if you really want to become great, and that means behind there are some dark stuff, right? For some reason, maybe you had a very weak background, maybe I don't know, you lived in a place that you couldn't really express your feelings, or you didn't have freedom, whatever, so all these things can become a fuel. Then you can actually check this with great artists like Picasso and others. They had the same exact thing. So they turn some actually great negativities around them into something else, and that's one of the reasons that they became really great. And then everyone kind of remembers their name. Other than that, there were artists who were better than Picasso for sure, or other big names. But that's not it. I think it's a combination of your character, your background, whatever you're looking for, and also where you live and how you live now, because that will affect all that, right? So and it's up to you how you sum it up.
And for yourself, like, to make sure things do kind of like stay in one place, because there's always that balance factor, right? And even when like we've all talked about the flow state, or like having a good day, even there's a reason why those things are you recognize, because maybe so many things fall in place in a nice level, and then you get that kind of like wherever it may be. But then there's kind of like maybe a lot of work involved, or a lot of things that need to kind of fall in place for that to happen. So how do you kind of like, for your own experience, or even maybe people that you've observed as well, like heroes or just fellow professionals, how do you kind of ensure that you kind of keep all those things spinning and ticking over to ensure that you know, are at that kind of like peak performance level?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess nowadays we are living in this pandemic thing still. That kind of answered everything regarding how much grip you have. It's absolutely nothing. So there is no one that can guarantee you anything. And I think the one thing that I learned, actually I learned it from Carter Goodrich, which is great because I met him, and he said this one thing that kind of stuck in my mind. And he said you're living in an uncertain kind of life, and the best thing you can do is to learn how to kind of surf on these waves, and not kind of tip over or fall. And that's the whole thing, to be honest with you. I mean, there is no control. You can obviously work hard, you can build things, you can do all this good stuff, but also don't really have that kind of false idea that everything is under your control and you can keep everything together. You might be this great artist who does this great story and then it sells millions, and this is really like the successful kind of type of artist we're talking about, and then his name is everywhere and all that, and the same exact artist a couple of years later might be really in a bad situation. And I know people like that, by the way. So these are all very real dangers.
For sure. No, for sure. And even like just artists as well, but even just everyday life, every corner of humanity, right?
I think I lost your voice. Your voice went kind of...
Right. Okay. So I totally forgot where we were at.
I think we were talking about uncertainty in life and the pandemic thing that kind of affected everything.
Yeah.
Like
So yeah, I guess we'll just welcome everybody back after some lovely technical difficulties on a hot day over here in the UK. So yeah, you were mentioning things like about, I guess, obviously just the mentality and what you need to thrive and survive as an artist. And I'm sure there's people listening who are, you know, think that, hey, that's a lot easier said than done. I'm sure you've heard it and you've experienced it yourself as well, where the case of like the journey of an artist isn't always a case of like a smooth sail, as you mentioned that already. And it's a case of, I guess there's a lot of insecurities that come into it as well. Seeing so much quote unquote greatness around you kind of puts people off.
Right.
But it clearly sounds like from how you experience it, and something that I attest to as well, where it's a case of like just keep pushing forward, keep striving forward. But then also even things like the pandemic really just threw things up. And, you know, not to get too personal for yourself, but obviously I know from what we've mentioned off the call that it was way more personal, way more upheaval than maybe an average person anticipated. So like how, I guess, even to go back a little bit before what we was talking about before, how have you navigated those highs and lows for yourself? Because I've mentioned about one of your biggest highs at the first time, which was obviously getting that job. What about that first big kind of like dip or, you know, like low that really kind of almost threw you off, maybe made you give up? Do you have any stories like that?
Actually, I'm experiencing one now because of the pandemic, and I think you already know that I got long COVID, and it's been almost like 4 months that I couldn't work or do nothing. So it's weird and it's hard and all that. So recently this is the one, but I had other letdowns before, you know, getting fired, you know, not having enough money, you know, not being able to finish the major that I took in university, all these type of things. But the recent one is actually hurting. So how I'm navigating, I don't know. I mean, the thing that I learned is that there's no right or wrong way of doing things. And you mess up, man. And I did as well. And also in this pandemic, you know, I learned you should have done this and that before you got the virus, or, you know, be prepared and do that. You cannot really follow all the instructions like one to one, so you're gonna mess up, and I did. But I don't know, just trying to I mean, I kind of promised myself that this time I'm not going to escape nothing. So I'm not going to run away. So if this virus is hitting me, or if I have to give up art or whatever, let it be. But the funny thing is, when you kind of stand, other stuff happens, you know, and that's the part that kind of surprises me myself. I wasn't really expecting a lot of love from people who I didn't even know, you know, and then supports from some folks that say, you know, they love my work or whatever, but the support that they kind of offered was insane. So that's the thing. I mean, the more I kind of age, or the more I kind of grow up, I learned that there are things that I don't know, tons of zillions of things that I don't know. So it's better than I don't kind of keep an open mind, basically. So
Yeah.
you can take in a lot of new stuff. And the thing that you mentioned about other great artists, and how you compare, that's a thing. And unfortunately, we artists always kind of suffer from that, and kind of pressure ourselves because of that. That's honestly, it's a very stupid thing at the same time, because there's no such a thing as like, this guy is a million times better, so somehow magically he's the one and no one else can do nothing else. No, it's just, if you look at nature, it's the same thing there. Like, a bee does what a bee does, and then a horse does what a horse does. So all these different things. So they are not one thing. So same goes as for flowers, right? If you want to have a more beautiful kind of sample metaphor, maybe flowers, so you can be another flower, you can be another beauty. There's no such a thing as hey, everything is close, this guy did this great industrial design stuff, then there's no one that does better than the
Yeah.
I mean, of course, if you want to compete with that person in that field, you're going to lose like crazy, and you're going to lose and lose and lose. And I know people for years that are actually close friends that they are trying to compete with like those big names, and don't do that. I think that's right there your recipe to disaster, because that person already knows what he's doing, and they got it from the very personal kind of workflow, or very personal way of looking at things, and even philosophy. So you don't have that, you don't know that, and the closest you get will be a repetition of something that is already great and it's working, and you don't know how that one works. So don't waste your time trying to kind of copy another person, or emulate. Is that a word?
Yeah, 100. I guess like copying, emulations. I guess more so. That's the positive side of copying, right? It's like like you emulating Carl Goodrich is almost like you're not trying to replace him, trying to conquer what he's done. It's just a case of like following his slipstream, almost, using a racing analogy, to be like, hey,
I mean, if you want to learn from it, if you want to kind of grow, sure. But if you want to become that other artist, I think that's a weird thing to do. I think same goes for music, right? Like, how many artists do you know that they're trying to kind of be Michael Jackson? That's the weird thing. Don't do that, because he happened. And you will be just a bad copy of him. I don't know.
Now, music's a great analogy, and I always like refer to different industries, and music's one of them. Of like just trying to like put in context of maybe like art stuff, because you try and apply the same philosophy or feeling or thought in a different industry and see kind of like how does it happen there. And but like what you just mentioned before, a lot of it just ends up being a human thing.
And people are not going to take you serious, and that's for sure. So I mean, exactly. And the thing about it, I mean, art itself, there is no measure. Like no one can kind of measure you and say, hey, you're like this good or that good. I mean, in certain areas, yes, technical stuff, okay, sure, anatomy, perspective, blah blah blah. So good, but that doesn't make you a good artist. Honestly, there are so many artists out there with great abilities, like really good people. Like they know their thing. They are good people, but they're not necessarily like big names in art. And I think the reason why is like maybe they don't want to be. I don't know about that, but the reason why is like maybe they don't believe in themselves. Like they don't think that they can do something that is different, but they actually absolutely can. And some of them have more than enough knowledge to do whatever they want to do. But maybe it's a fear. I don't know what it is. But at the end, you could be yourself. You could be doing your own thing. And unfortunately, there are even samples of Van Gogh is the best one that he did great. Like if you look at the art, it's really extraordinary. It's different art. I don't care about technical stuff. I'm just talking about the way that he actually sees life, right? And then no one understood him. I think he killed himself and all that. But that doesn't make him a bad artist, right? That's maybe it's a dark example, but you got my point.
No, exactly. And like I remember when I was in art school and college and stuff, like they always spoke about like especially those classical artists, those old school legends almost. They didn't know how great they were and they never will, because a lot of them died thinking that
Yeah.
they failed and were terrible, which is very interesting. Like, we talk about hindsight. The hindsight's all there hundreds of years ago almost,
Yeah.
and we're still not learning the lessons, kind of.
Yeah.
We're still kind of repeating the same steps. And like, just to what you mentioned before, I think the commercial aspect of art and the fact that we have careers in art, it's fused with earning a living and all that kind of stuff as well. I think that's where the measurement comes into it. A case of like, hey, that really skews, I personally believe, the potential great art somebody could make, because it's about where's the money at, which obviously, you've mentioned that before as well, about earning a living and bills and all that kind of stuff. That really does dictate certain people's careers and stuff.
Sure.
But like, from your experiences, like, have you ever gone through any of those things you just mentioned about, like, where you trying to maybe compete or almost resisting that, where maybe everybody else was? Like, I'm sure you got tales to tell in that regard.
Of course. I mean, I had phases that I kind of naturally, was doing something that was super close to the artist that I loved, and it was changing, So I was looking at these other artists that I loved even more, and then I was like doing stuff, but that was unconscious. So I wasn't really,
Yeah.
focusing on, hey, I have to become that person. No. Then I think for maybe I cannot remember when, but slowly I started to do my own thing, and I really enjoyed it. The reason why I'm doing it until this day is because I'm enjoying it. Otherwise, no. Why would I even be in this field? So that's why I just kept doing it. And the funny thing is, again, people start to notice you, and you start to get attention. You start to, like, don't worry about those parts. That's what I'm trying to say. If you're worried about money, you will always be worried about money. So that worry not gonna go away. If you are worried about that you are not good enough, you're not a good artist, that will stay with you, even if you become the greatest artist on earth. So it's up to you how you deal with all these uncertainties, fears, and all these mental. And we do have, as an artist, we do have negative thoughts like crazy, right? So
yeah, for sure. And I think, I guess, like, maybe it's the outlet of those things. Like, the art is the perfect thing, because wherever your emotion is, positive, negative, neutral, whatever, you can put it into that page.
Yeah,
you can put it into that art, you can put it into that design and everything, and it lives on. And like, even just looking at your work, for example, like, obviously it's very colorful, it's very stylized. So that in itself, at face value, might think that, hey, it's this particular kind of vibe. But then when you look at the image, look at the themes, look at the certain things on there, there's a lot of very grown-up things happening, a lot of very things that are maybe, like, in a great way sinister. Obviously, the storytelling involved, all these kind of things as well. And this is a great kind of, like, I guess, backing up my point of, like, how an image can encapsulate emotion and feelings. How do you figure that out? How do you get that onto the page?
Actually, that sometimes becomes my problem, because clients don't know what to do with it, right? Because there are all these ages that are clear, like PG-13 or 6 years old, all that. But mine is weird because I do have the stylized kind of like an animation look into my work, and then but it doesn't really apply to smile child. So I do have a problem commercially speaking, but that's another thing, like same concept that we were talking about. I'm still doing it, and it's working. I don't know, like I get jobs that kind of I do the side that they like, right? So I do more like characters that are more childish maybe or whatever, and then works for them, and then they love it, they pay me, I guess. That's that. Also, I mean, again, for myself, I just do whatever I feel doing, and I enjoy it, and I really don't judge it. I don't go, hey, we have sexuality, but this is like a cartoon look thing. I don't think that way. Maybe it's I don't know, I don't have the right or wrong part, but I'm not trying to ruin the next generation or nothing like that.
No, cool. No, I love it. And it's also, it seems to me at least, that you've definitely managed to, maybe compartmentalize is the wrong word, but you've managed to, like, be able to distinguish the professional side of things as well as just the personal execution. When is that something that happens subconsciously and naturally as well? Is that something that is more maybe strategic? Again, like you mentioned with clients, there's always that thing with client experience where it's certain things that I'm sure you worked in film and TV, and like you mentioned, when there's an age rating involved, there's a lot of rigid kind of like parameters and stuff. So how did you manage to, or how do you manage to kind of like do what the client wants, but at the same time still keep it that fits with your vision, or just at least something that's enjoyable for you to do?
I think one thing that I know is that you kind of almost never get the project that you're totally satisfied with, you're totally happy with. So kind of it's better that the sooner you understand this, the better, because then you can channel your energy into the ways that you like to channel it. So for me, it was the same thing. I wanted to do these random things that I'm doing, and I'm working on story stuff, creating characters that I really love to create, and I did that. And this, again, the interesting thing is I got attention because of this, not the commercial stuff. I actually don't even have that much of commercial stuff online because of all the NDAs and blah blah blah. And I don't have the patience to kind of see, okay, when this thing is out, and then I'm starting. No, I can't. I was like, screw it, let's not put everything. So that's how I do it. I mean, when it comes to clients, I basically keep it on very open communication. So I ask if I have freedom to do this or that. Usually you don't. So they say, no, don't do that. Or sometimes they're like, they want to explore, they want to risk stuff. They say, hey, go to certain areas and do this and that. I just communicate with them. But I usually say 80% of the time I just follow what they order me. So I try to do it as best as I possibly can.
So like a chef, if someone doesn't want egg in their dish, you make sure they don't have egg in their dish, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what is that kind of ideal? I guess because I always distinguish it as personal endeavors and obviously professional stuff. Like it's, for me, as my brain works, is very distinct. And I totally am on the same page as yourself in terms of how to handle that kind of stuff. Also, similar to yourself as well, is like all my stuff that I have posted is purely personal work. That's what got me hired initially, and that's where it's going to stay. So I'm going to purely stick with the personal stuff because that's the formula. It works for me.
Yeah, that's who you are, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. But it's like, no, my brain's gone blank again. I forgot the question I was going to say, but it was basically more to do with your personal work. So like, do you treat it in the same way as the professional stuff, in the sense of like, is it structured the same way you get a brief and you start tackling the project and deliver it? Or is it more abstract? Is it always like almost like a constant thing, and then certain things kind of just come to life and become what they are?
I think it's a mixture. I mean, sometimes I follow a very rigid kind of structure, and I enjoy it, but sometimes I don't, and I just go straight and then do something. But one of the things that I do a lot is, people told me that I didn't even notice that, is that I do have a lot of steps that I take, to do art. I don't mind it myself because I can take breaks in between, and I can think about each stage very clearly. So if I do sketch, I take my time, do my sketch, and then clean it up, fix it, all that, and then I go to outline. Same thing goes for that. I think in the course I kind of almost 100% covered all of these things. So the whoever is interested in the course, they can see how exactly I tackled ideas all the way from like thumbnail beginning to the finished product.
Yeah, I remember the question now. When my brain went blank, I blame the heat wave. When you're professional projects, what is the perfect kind of project that you enjoy the most? Is there such a thing even for professional work?
You mean what do I enjoy the most?
Yeah, so like obviously because you've done a lot of stuff, right? So like, what is the when a job comes in, or when you get hired for something, what is the kind of like type of project that you get? Or maybe it could be something smaller, like the kind of freedom you're given, or even the subject matter, even maybe the technical matter. But like, what do you?
I mean,
is it perfect?
Yeah, I mean, there is such a thing. I mean, for me, I enjoy the most when I can create things all the way from scratch, and I don't have interferes. Like don't get me wrong. I love to work with team. So my ideal situation would be that I'm in a good country, connected with good artists, and we have this big table, that we can sit and kind of brainstorm ideas and then do this great show or book or whatever. That's my ideal situation ever. But I want to have control, and I want to have the creative control. Let's say, not the dictator kind of type of control. But I would love to have creative freedom. That's a better word. Just to do stuff, sometimes Miyazaki is a great big name, but he does the same thing. So he's like basically running his own empire kind of thing, which is amazing. So, and to me, I mean, of course there are the how do you call it? There are the money part to it. There are the fame part to it. There are all these aspects. But I don't care about those aspects.
Mhm.
When you look at it plainly, he's a guy. He's an artist who does he loves nature or whatever. He sits there. He has this big table. There are other artists who help. So he's just doing his thing. And this is something that lots of people don't really understand. Like at the end, that's what it is. So if you don't have that, then you're either following certain other ideas, or people or directions, or maybe you don't have something to say, or you don't want to be that. That's also fine, by the way. Like I myself, I'm struggling with the storytelling and a lot of different aspects of this job or
Interesting.
art. Yeah. So but if there is something in you, if you want to have that freedom, if you want to really be a person who kind of creates stuff and kind of takes responsibility for his creativity, then do that. And for me, that's the perfect situation. And he's leaving it. I'm not leaving it.
It sounds like, for me at least, just speaking with to today, it's like not so much a superpower, but it seems like the key thing for you is, or at least like seeing as an artist create their thing, commitment's a big thing. If you're not committed to it, then everything kind of falls apart. Like once you commit to something, everything else can happen how it's supposed to happen, good or bad. As long as the commitment's there, that's what kind of pushes you. Am I correct?
Also other aspects. Let's be clear, let's be real. Different countries, different rules, different limitations, different freedoms, all those things are actually very important. And I think nowadays, because of all the political stuff that are happening, this is becoming more crystal clear. Like if you are in Japan, for instance, there are already a great stream of manga or different art forms in the stylized kind of realm and platform that's been happening for years, right? So it's kind of rooted there. So you build the stuff on top of other stuff, right? I'm coming from Iran, and honestly, I mean, visually speaking, we had greater stuff before, but recently, like contemporary stuff, no, not really. I mean, nowadays, actually, young people are learning, or even artists that are my age or a bit older, they're actually doing good. So they're trying to kind of elevate that and then push this thing forward. But let's compare it to Japan, for instance. Japan is great in terms of the platform, let's say, and US, for instance. Even UK is pretty great. There are these big studios; they do really good work. So that's a big factor, man. That in that sense, you can start to continue as they've done it before. How I don't know how to put it, but you have something to work with. Let's say.
Yeah, no, got it. Yeah. It's like,
But
like
if you have to kind of invent the wheel, then that's a big problem. So that's why you cannot really say one thing to everyone, because then they are going to kill themselves, and then they get nowhere, because the platform has to be there as well.
And it's like, speaking of platforms, it's something cool that you've done as well within the course itself. And we'll get to the course a little bit later, but I just want to touch upon the course also. What you mentioned before as well about you struggle with storytelling. Like that is something that, at least looking at your work and even seeing the course already, which is awesome, by the way. Like that seems as something that like you'd be surprised at. Like, hey, like, it's like even like Miyazaki coming around and saying, hey, I struggle with storytelling. You'd be like, what are you talking about? But that's not denying your experience. So obviously, what is it about storytelling that you find difficult? Considering that, like someone like myself, I'm sure many people would agree as well, that at least looking at it from the outside, it doesn't look like it's the case.
Yeah.
So how do you cover it up?
I mean, when it comes to illustration, I think I can do okay. Like when it comes to like one image or maybe a couple of images. But when it comes to actual storytelling, because it's a different field, we need to make that very clear. It's writing, basically. Got it. So in that area, there are a lot of things that are missing. But I'm trying to learn, man. I'm trying to get better and do that too. But it's a different thing. So
yeah, okay, got it. But like with storytelling itself, when did you start really picking that up? It's almost like, I guess, learning a new craft again. So when did that kind of become a thing that you really wanted to nurture? I
was randomly reading books. My mother has this big library, and then she
Nice.
was like offering a couple of books once in a while. I'm not a big reader, I would say. I'm actually pretty lazy, but I mean, I kind of read some good books randomly. And that was the first thing for me. So that was the first kind of little sparkle that hey, this is interesting, like, because they're actually very close, right? Like music, writing, painting, all that. You just, the techniques are different, let's say.
Yeah.
I would say they're almost 100% the same thing.
Fully
So
agree.
but then I started to kind of imagine, you know what? I remember this book that my mom gave us when I was super, like I was like 3 years old, maybe, like super small. It was I cannot remember the name of it, but one of those pop-up books, and it was the red cape lady thing. But it was done amazingly. I don't know who did that book. I'm still looking for that, but I cannot find it. But they had these dolls and setups, and then they took photos with the great lighting, and the lighting was insane. Like it was too much for a book, and it wasn't an animation or nothing. They've done this extraordinary work only for that book, and that really inspired me, because when I was looking at it as a child, I could live there, like I could touch those dolls or characters, and so that really affected me. And I think the first storytelling thing that I got from it was like asking about this lady, what is she doing, what is this wolf doing there, and I was in there. I was like, I really care about all those characters and the environment and all that. So for me, maybe that was the first thing.
Right. That's great origin story for that, 100%. And it's like, again, kind of what I mentioned before about like almost other realms, so to speak, where you kind of pick up these inspirations. Like, what other kind of, like, I guess, mediums that you've seen? Like, obviously you got storytelling in like movies, games, even music, whether it's singing lyrically or even just for the sounds itself.
I mean,
what other things inspiring you?
I watched all these different movies, right? Like everybody else. But I think my life itself had so many different stories that kind of covered that story part. Yeah, so we moved a lot, we went from this city to that city, changed school, so many different stories. So honestly, just because of all these changes that we had as a family, like until maybe 18 or something, I wasn't really a big film worm or something that, movie worm. No, I kind of slowly got introduced to all these things, and I enjoyed it a lot. I was like, this is pretty amazing. and again, you said it at certain point, we are doing this to kind of let our emotions go and things like that. And for me, that's the main reason that I'm still doing it. Kind of finding myself, kind of purifying myself. So that's the main reason. I'm not trying to, like, say, do a story or do an art to kind of blow everyone's mind or or win. Actually, to this date, I never ever even entered one competition. I cannot remember that I did even one, which I kind of regretted, by the way. But I didn't do it. It's those things that for me to this date is important. Just to be real, stay true to what you love and all those good stuff.
I couldn't say it any better. And it's something that I fully agree with, and even something I fully like prescribe almost if I was a creative doctor, so to speak. Because it's like you said, like competitions, I've entered a few of those, but there's something that draws yourself back to kind of just, the craft, like just making something, right? Like it, almost the act of creating, working what you're working on, whatever it is, nothing can top that after that's completed.
Exactly. I mean, if you cannot enjoy the process, I think you're losing on so many levels. Another good thing about artists is like you can just call artists without even knowing them, without even knowing their language, and then sit together at one table and enjoy and just create art. This is an extraordinary thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it's almost like a language unto itself. It's beyond a language almost, which is great. I want to hear more about philosophy of art from you.
Like what part of philosophy? My own philosophy or
everything? Like, I guess we haven't got time for everything, but it almost like I guess basically what I'm trying to say is your attitude towards art, why you create, the reasons why you create. It's like perfect. Like I'll put that on a t-shirt. Some of the quotes you've had already. So like it's right up my street, so to speak. So yeah, I just want to like dig deeper into like almost the whys and hows and what art means for you. Almost like like why do you think art's so powerful? Let's say like why do you think it is so universally accepted and people from backgrounds never met each other wherever else, but you see someone else's art? Why does it pervade beyond just hey, this is a cool image?
I think by this date, lots of people know this, that we cannot understand only based on words or dialects, because they're limited. Like you cannot really express certain things with them, although we have names for all these different stuff. And art is one of those bridges, one of those wires that kind of goes straight to the point. So it doesn't. I mean, there are arts that are not that, right? But then you kind of get it. And I don't know. This is a very interesting, by the way, part that even a normal person who doesn't have like that much of a good education, when he or she looks at something, they understand and they get certain feeling from it. And this is very interesting for me. I mean, so that means there's no layer in between you and art. It's you, because I mean, we are human, we are experiencing all these different emotions, right? And then an artist put things together based on whatever that artist thinks, or philosophy of life, as you said it. Then it's you and that art. So it's a great feeling. So you get to experience different views right on, like it's better than VR even. because it opens a new window. Like you didn't know that such a thing exists.
Yeah,
I think Van Gogh is the best example for that. And
like,
the reason that it took so long to understand his art was exactly that, because no one could really see, like from that point of view. But when he actually showed that, people started to kind of get stunned. What is that? Like how can you even see a night sky like that? But when it's there.
Yeah. That's a great example of Van Gogh, because I remember at school, like obviously growing up, it's all about cartoons, stuff that you see media wise, right? Like, what's put in front of you, cool stuff. Like, hey, this is a cool robot. Love Power Rangers when I was growing up, all those kind of things. So I remember like when we was doing art stuff, the theory stuff, it was almost like again, people that I've fully respected and admire now, but I didn't really like, hey, I don't really want to see Picasso stuff. I want to see, it doesn't look like a Gundam or anything. Or, like Van Gogh, like, yeah, cool sunflower, where's the robots? Kind of thing. But as you mature, as you get older, you understand why these people did what they did. And then also putting down something that they saw that no one else can see, but then bringing beauty to something that no one thought there's beauty there initially. Yeah. Like that is the genius.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, robots are awesome, by the way. I love robots. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When those concepts kind of fall apart is that when you don't have a story, when there's nothing behind it. Other than that, everything is perfectly fine. Even like there are, I don't know, movies that are very sexually kind of pumped, but they're really great movies. It doesn't really tone them down or nothing. So same thing goes with robots. Or I mean, Terminator is a best example. I think now it's one of those classics. It's such a great movie, and it's based on robots. And the reason why is, again, because he opened another window, right, that wasn't there.
Yes.
Like now, for some reason, all those robots are familiar. Like you kind of Star Wars is another good example. Like they exist, it's not something they try to kind of show you to impress you, or that somebody really loved to show this universe and then introduced everyone else. Basically, did the whole world a favor. So that's what it is.
Another one, but not a robot, so to speak, but like Terminator, like it's all-time classic. Like, I could just spend years just talking how great that film is. But like that, the Monolith in 2001, like it's the most. You think about it, if you deliver to a client a rectangle in 3D, whatever it is, the straight edges line 90 degrees, it's the most boring thing ever. But with the storytelling, the ramifications of what that particular object meant for that whole piece, and even in culture in general, like that just the most simplified thing you can see and the impact it can make, that kind of says it all.
Very true. I mean, also there are other factors, like the lifestyles that are changing. Maybe there are not many stories out there, which there are, by the way. But like if you are in your box living just not observing the life, not going outside, see what's going on, you're gonna miss out. You're gonna miss out on a story and on so many other things. But nowadays, I guess we have to stay in, right? So.
Yeah, yeah. Just kind of like back on before we like I guess switch gears to the course soon. Just back on like the pandemic and stuff, because again, like you're very experienced, 17-year career so far, and you've probably seen the difference between like when things switch from analog traditional mediums to digital to now 3D, now future of AI and whatever else is going to be. So you've kind of seen the progression, and not only just as an observer, but as a professional, as an active professional working in the industry as well. Like, so, and obviously now with the pandemic, where that kind of like completely changed the way a lot of us work. Like, I'm sure I can confirm with a lot of artists or relate to, where it's like being kind of like somewhat isolated, doing your own thing is great, which pandemic kind of offered at least, but almost in a very brutal way. But like, how did that particularly affect you as an artist? Because every life experiences, whether we notice it or not, affects how we do things, how we speak to our loved ones, how we don't, but obviously how we make art as well, like all these things. So how did the pandemic specifically, because I guess that's relatable to everybody who's probably listening right now, how did that affect you?
I mean, it hit me hard. I said that before.
Oh yeah, obviously physically, definitely as well, but yeah.
So health-wise, and also, I mean, before that, I did have this life of a bit of an isolation. Maybe it's not a good thing, but I did have it, and I was leaving it, kind of taking my time. I was going to a coffee shop nearby, sitting there working. And I'm going. We have a beach here, which is nice, not that far. So I was going there, and I was sitting in a park and working. So I was a bit like free in that sense. But then I got even more limited. So for me, it was bad, because I was already living that kind of a condensed life, or whatever the name is.
Right.
I was doing my own thing, and I was focusing on all that. But then, more than that isolation, no. You know what I mean? Then that happened. So yeah, man, I'm still trying to kind of unfold everything. Like, I might even, after this whole thing, I might even go somewhere, get a job for a year or two, just to be with people and to change this whole mentality. But if you are isolated, more isolation is not good for you.
Nah, never. Yeah. No. Like, it's like, even if you like, you don't have to like kind of like interact, but even just being around just
like-minded
people, life, even just take, just seeing life happen in front of you, like the bin people come and collect the rubbish, and you can go to the supermarket and everything's kind of like normal, like just that complete absence. Like, what is it in prisons where it's like solitary confinement, where it's almost like you can't even hear things. Your senses are deprived, right? It's like it has this crazy adverse effect.
This happened to everyone. I don't know, sometimes you feel there are people who don't give a shit. They go out there, they're like everywhere, they do their things. Some of them apparently are doing better than people who kind of like me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true. Yeah, like there's always that, like there's someone else in the world who's kind of like the polar opposite, where negative experience for you for the most part might be completely great for them. And that's the beauty of life, I guess. Beauty of like, humanity.
You ask them, there is a virus. Where is your mask? About virus, man. Like they don't even know.
And like, how did it affect your? Did it affect your art in any particular way? Like, not positive, negative, or even just you noticed the change? Or did that kind of stay immune? No pun intended. Like just the way you made, the way you created and stuff.
It did affect me. I mean, again, because the health wise, I couldn't work, and I'm slowly kind of trying to pick things up. So 3-4 months basically no work, but also it was a good thing, like a wake up call for me, is that you're not only an artist, right? Yeah, there are other aspects to life. There are. I mean, even health wise, I mean, I was okay-ish, but I was going to gym and stuff like that, but I was doing it randomly, so I wasn't really concerned about it that much. But now this happened, and I was like, hey, there are other parts of life. You need to be more careful. You need to care. But also, we have limitations, right? Again, we don't have control over everything. So this thing happened, and lots of millions of people got affected. Millions died, So this is a very serious thing. So I don't know, man. Hopefully this bad time kind of passes away,
Mm.
and the lessons that we all learned kind of stays.
I mean, like, that's the key thing, right? Like every experience, if you can take a lesson from it, that means, like, I guess that's, I don't know if that's the human condition or the way we're supposed to do things, but we're supposed to, like, I guess, learn our lessons, or at least see I guess how humans have survived. Like, hey, that's a bad thing. I'm not going to jump into that fiery pit. I'm going to stay away
Yeah.
from it, kind of thing. But like going forward for yourself, what, I guess, maybe the key, you mentioned about obviously like lifestyle, maybe choices of health and stuff, but like what kind of key things are you going to definitely, or have already switched and changed going forward now as a result of this thing?
I would be a bit I'm trying to be more not productive, but maybe well thought stuff, like maybe well planned stuff more,
Mm-hmm.
which is a total opposite of what's happening nowadays. But I'm gonna try to plan things and put a certain clear deadlines for, especially for my personal project that I'm working on, so I can actually do that and then finish it. That's the main thing for me now. Other than that, as a person, human being, be more kind. I try to be more kind, just maybe before I was like talking to some people more sharply. I'm gonna tone that down,
Right,
because
right, right.
I didn't know the effect of it, and then I heard
Mm.
it from different sources that, hey, maybe that comment that you told that person kind of hurt that person or stuff
Right,
like that.
right, right.
And sometimes we don't think about these things, but these are
Yeah, yeah.
actually important, super important. Like, you never know that you might say something harsh or bad to someone that actually changes his career or his
Mm.
life or whatever it could be. So you don't know how they kind of uh, count on you. Like, some
Yeah.
people actually really count on you. You say something, and then all of a sudden, that person kind of gets very disappointed. So
Wow.
so I think these type of little things, actually, not they are not little, they're actually big things.
Sure.
I should learn this whole thing. I should go to this process of being. I've been, I think, relatively kind, but more kind.
Sure. Yeah, you saw, like, I guess there's more areas of opportunity, right? Like to kind of like
Yeah, yeah.
maybe switch things up. And you mentioned earlier about, like, especially with your experience, it's kind of like you describe as like you have to kind of reinvent the wheel, especially like in your field. For others who are kind of like going for the same thing, maybe for the same reasons you are, or for other different reasons where they feel like to even get to the same level as somebody else, I have to reinvent the wheel whilst they're already riding on 4-wheel drive. Like, what would you say to them to kind of like how to continue to, I guess, not basically to not like to get discouraged, and just to make sure that to do these specific things
Yeah,
or
yeah.
behaviors to continue?
Yeah, have that mind of a cow. Just go forward. Do your thing. That's for sure.
It's
And
great
never,
advice.
yeah, never let anyone let you down, because people are, some of them are expert at doing that.
Yeah.
Even a small talk in the morning that is a negative talk could bring you down. Avoid that shit, like that. Avoid it, because I mean, some people are expert at making their problem your problem. Just
Oh,
be
for sure.
extra
Yeah.
careful that you kind of have that line, so that will save a ton of time and energy for you, which you can basically direct and focus for your art and career, and learn from each other. There's so many different good artists out there that are actually offering plenty of things for free even.
Mhm.
Learn from them, and be in contact with them. Take the courses that you think that are appropriate. If my course, for instance, works for you, you can learn something from it. I'm not talking about the business point of view, I'm talking about the learning point of view. Go for it. Try to take as much as you can and basically apply that to your own workflow. uh, these things, just be focused, do your thing, learn, and always grow. Never give up. Don't listen to negative thoughts,
Mhm.
negative feelings or energies, and be your own critic. Don't be super harsh on yourself, because artists do that. Sometimes we go too hard, to the point that we don't even want to do things. You really don't want to do that. And I think plenty of artists out there, even especially young ones, are doing really good. So
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think they're gonna be fine.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like you said, like you've been, like you've been having a career since before students and artists that probably will take your course now, or already doing their thing, weren't even born yet. And like
True.
but then that's the beauty of like the courses. You got all that experience that, for like I mentioned, like the different, I guess I talk about ages in terms of like how art trade in terms of tools, obviously like analog, digital, traditional, and they all still are valid and all still exist to a certain extent. But yeah, that's a perfect segue to the course, creative illustration, which you teach. And if so, this episode should be dropped when the course is already out. So people definitely grab that, they can check it out. How did the course come about? Like, how's the experience of just generating the course in general? Because I know it's a huge feat. I know it's a huge endeavor, not only just to make a course, but also getting all that knowledge and putting it in a nice way which you do in the perfect way, just to confirm,
Mhm.
and getting it out there. So how did that come about, and what was your journey like on it?
Uh, Honestly, I kind of tried to um, simplify whatever I knew so far. So from sketching, from traditional sketching, as you said, animation experiences, game experiences, advertising experiences, all those things. Like I try to simplify it. I mean, of course, in a way that is kind of combined in the course and available in that limited time that we had. But it was a good thing for me as a practice, because I had to say goodbye to whatever I knew until this point, and then kind of document it and then put it in the shelf and say, okay, this is as much as I know, and I'm gonna share it, and then I'm gonna learn, and I'm gonna grow. I'm gonna see what else I can do, and all those
Yeah,
things. And so it had two kind of sides. So one side was letting go of whatever I know, and then another side was for me to kind of know where I'm standing, what else I can work on. There are a lot of things that I can work on, so
hmm
it was a very great experience in that sense.
and in terms of like the type of content, so because we were talking about this before, like a few weeks ago when we were discussing the course itself, and I mentioned, remember, if you remember, like I was talking about what I kind of, I guess, descriptive words of like, hey, is it a cartoon? Is it anime? Is it this? You referred to it as like this is stylized illustration.
Mhm.
So for people who are listening who want to do this kind of work, or maybe like never thought they could do this, but it's super interesting to them, how would you define stylized illustration, and like what kind of benefits can they gain either professionally? Obviously,
Mhm.
personally, is purely up to the creator themselves.
Yep.
But what can they get from, I guess, this type of work, this type of visual style?
Yep. I'm gonna call it a stylized because it varies. So
Mm-hmm.
you have all these different designs that are kind of go underneath the stylized group. So I'll just call it a stylized, because of course they could be for cartoons, they could be for games, they could be for advertising, and if you are a young person, or if you are a person who wants to learn this specific thing, also learn how kind of all the art concepts and all the art uh, principles kind of apply. I mean, visual arts apply to this, uh, and it's also the same thing, by the way. So this will be interesting for them. Like if you want to work on a game, if you want to make an animation, or work with a team, or work on a movie, visual development stuff, concept art stuff, character design, even, or some environment stuff that I've done, and also even graphic design. If you want to design a poster that is relative to an IP, stuff like that. So because of the nature of the whole process, that again comes from thumbnail all the way to sketching, to clean up, to outline, and all that, it's useful for so many different fields. So it's
Mm-hmm.
up to them how much they learn from it, or how they want to kind of interpret that into their own field.
Nice. So it's like very versatile, right? Like they can take it and then they can branch off into whichever direction is required. And I guess
I think so.
the beauty what I saw with that as well is not only just like say, because obviously let's say you just want somebody's taking the course and like, I want to work specifically, in cartoons, or I want to work in animation, for example, in that particular field, in that industry. Then you can take it, do what you need to do, and then you can branch off. But let's say you're freelancing and you get clients that do different things. You can still use the same knowledge and switch it for different
Hmm.
ones, which
Yeah.
you clearly do because this is your workflow and this is what you've done throughout your career as well. Um, Another cool thing as well is that the kind of subject matter that you tackle, because it's not just a character, it's not just an environment, it's also the key art as well. So there's a lot of things combined in one.
Right.
Um, Why did you structure it in that particular way?
I wanted to give away as much as I can in the time frame that we had, and also in the course I mentioned that if you wanna dig deeper, so say you wanna do character design, maybe this course is good that you kind of get the idea of how everything kind of works, and then you go take another course that is specifically in character designs, for instance, or another course that is specifically in, I don't know, graphic design. But I didn't want to do that one course that is kind of deep in one subject. I wanted to put all the subjects together and kind of cover it in one course. So a person who wants to, again, learn a variety of things, they can basically pick things up, And honestly, I think each lesson has its own kind of use and value. So maybe you want to focus on mainly character design, for instance, and then you don't want to watch the whole thing. You can just watch the character design part, learn something from it, and then build on top of that. Go find more references, find more courses even, and then you can dig deeper. So I wanted to have this variety of things in one course.
Nice. Well, another cool thing I like as well is that, again, this is like, because I don't particularly do this style. I don't work in this specific kind of field. So a lot of it, when you're not familiar with something deeply, it's a lot of assumptions, right? So I always thought that, okay, this is purely going to be, like just done on Photoshop, but it's not. You got traditional, you got Photoshop, there's 3D involved as well. And then all of that combines beautifully. And same with the kind of like the discipline aspect, you can almost take the course purely in a specific medium, not necessarily all of them.
And also even a style.
I
mean, style wise also, you could be a person who does realistic stuff, but still same thing applies, composition wise, everything that we talked about, character, everything that we talked about, environment, all that, it still applies. So it's the same thing, it's just the style is different.
And just to jump in on that specifically, so I mainly do like vehicles and stuff, and again the execution that I tend to finish them in is different from this. Yet from looking at the course, when I do take it properly, I already know what I'm going to use for this, and I can adapt it into my style. So that just shows the versatility of, like, let's say somebody like myself who's maybe not necessarily, I'd love to do this kind of style, but say from a professional point of view, I do a different style. I've already been able to take knowledge and your workflow and adapt it to something else.
Thanks, man. I'm glad to hear.
That's awesome. And obviously, like, you're art director as well as just, like, I guess on the other end of the table. So, did that kind of impact how you structure the course as well? Because you kind of seen the both sides, right? Like, the client delivering work and then the art director seeing the work and obviously making the amendments elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I've been an art director actually for 7-8 years. So that type of point of view definitely affected the way that I kind of look at things, and also the way that I did this course, because as an art director, you have to follow certain direction and stick to it and find the solution for that, if it makes any sense. So I basically try to do the same thing here. Like I was like, okay, what if this IP, looks like this, and then how can we kind of backward engineer the whole thing? How can we, go from the key art and see what kind of a key art works for this IP, what kind of a character works, what kind of an environment works. So this is a type of kind of mind that an art director has, which, by the way, I would say that applies for everything else too, like for visual development. If you are a visual development artist or concept artist, I think you should kind of think like an art director too, because art director is not that person, to me at least, who's like sitting up there and like says it should be like this, and then everyone else kind of does that. They should show some sort of a direction. So whether by their own art or some great references or some clear vision. So and having that vision is a key, so everyone else can follow and then do their thing.
And with the course itself, so like I said, I mentioned that I've already taken value, and it's not necessarily my, I guess, creative space, so to speak.
But we're not talking from the business standpoint, no?
Oh no.
Okay, good to know.
But like, in terms of like, I guess, I still have comfort in drawing. I still have comfort in like illustration skills. So for anybody who's completely taken this, at least if this is like style illustration kind of look is completely new to you, as I can show that this is definitely going to work for you. But for someone who's completely new to art in general, like what kind of level or what kind of like, I guess, kind of background is helpful for them to take the course?
Yeah, good question. I think you need to have a base because I didn't cover the basics. I didn't cover, how to draw good lines or, flowing lines and S-curves and blah, blah, blah. There are a lot of different concepts in each. That's why I said each subject, like say character design, has its own thing. So if you want to unfold that, you need to really dig deeper. So you need to have an understanding of art. You need to have an understanding of color. Just the basics basically, and then take the course. If you don't have those understandings, you can still learn at least how the process works and how everything kind of comes together in a studio or something like that, or even as a personal artist. You can see the workflow. But if you really want to follow the steps and then do your own thing, then you need to definitely have some understanding of art.
So that's just a case of like, I guess, being comfortable, pen in hand, line making, and then obviously be confident to know that you can make imagery and then obviously that'll help. And I guess the beauty is you can do that simultaneously with the course. It doesn't have to be done.
It's possible. I mean, even if your style is different, if you are doing more, I don't know, simple stuff, even if you use a pen, that's fine. You don't need to necessarily, color things like to the end, but you still can follow certain steps that kind of gets you to the point that you want.
Awesome.
Hopefully, at least hopefully, right?
I mean, that was awesome. And I really can't wait just to see the students' work from the course, because not just purely in terms of like, I guess, the visual style, which is super awesome. Like, I don't want to not give that kind of like its flowers, so to speak, but just the knowledge that's already in there. And obviously, like everyone's imagination, the world's already in their head. This is really going to help them bring it to life. And so one more point I forgot to mention. Obviously, we spoke about like how the course can help people in a professional setting, in a career. But at the same time, if you want to make your own project, like an IP, for example, this is, again, very versatile and can help you with that as well.
I think so. I mean, if you, I said it in the course as well, if you basically multiply this, so do the same thing over and over again for each steps, you eventually can actually make your own IP.
I mean, thank you very much for this. I could talk to you all day, but the sweltering heat, and obviously we have other things to do as well, so maybe it's not wise. But thanks for jumping on. I really appreciate the stuff you said today.
Sure. It was nice talking to you. Thank you. Have a great day.
I hope you enjoyed that chat with Amin as much as I did. And I'm sure his perspective and love for his craft will prove to be inspirational to many of you. Learn even more from him in creative illustration, which is available now. Hit the links below to sign up, and be sure to drop Amin and us a follow by tapping on our social links too. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.